This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies, where we try to solve the world's problems through the miracle of carbohydrates, one recipe at a time, with host Marissa Rothkopf and her dog, Bosco.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here again with me on The Secret Life of Cookies. My guest on this week of so many important legal decisions is Kimberly Atkins, legal expert, co-host of the Sisters-in-Law podcast, and as you will learn, an ace cook. And before we dive deep into the pod, you can find Kimberly's recipe notes on my Substack at marissarothkopf.substack.com, along with a wicked little recipe for pumpkin spice cinnamon buns. Yes, I said cinnamon buns, and a Valentine's Day cake this weekend, all there on my Substack. And if you can support my work with a subscription for $5 a month, I would truly appreciate it. Or if that's not possible yet, you can subscribe for free. And please don't forget to join Deep State Radio if you haven't already as a member for special perks. Either way, I'm grateful for your support. Alrighty, and welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies on a sunny, I think it's February day, when Nikki Haley can call herself truly second to none. Since dear Nikki Haley did not win, and she came in, I guess, second to nobody in the Nevada caucuses, which is just hilarious. And my guest to talk about such hilarities is my cat Calvin, who is now in front of the screen, and more importantly, much more importantly, Kimberly Atkins, legal expert, journalist extraordinaire, fashionable human, and, as we'll learn today, also Super Bowl food queen, which I've just crowned you that. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here.
We are not, as usual, as I usually do, cooking as we speak, but we will be talking about cooking. And my cat is very happy for that because it means that I can devote much of my attention to him as he is now. And anybody's wondering, on my lap. How is Snickers, your dog, by the way?
Snickers is fantastic. It's funny. We've had her less than a year. We got her last March, and she was a rural rescue. It's so hard for me to say that word. Rural rescue.
And then there's always
she's a hound dog, so I kind of sound like her when I say that. And so it was tough for her because I live in the city. So, buses go by and other noises really freaked her out. And now she just struts along the street, like saying hello to everybody, like how far she's come in just a matter of 10 months or so is really incredible. So she's fantastic.
She is the most adorable thing. And it reminds me of that episode of 30 Rock where what's her face is in the film called The Rural Juror.
Yes. That's exactly right. I felt that deep in my soul.
Okay, so before we go off on that, it is I had to get you on this week, and I'm grateful that you're here because those of us without a law degree are left thinking all sorts of thoughts about all sorts of cases this week. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the one that what happened yesterday in Michigan with the mother of Ethan Crumbley being found guilty on all counts for involuntary manslaughter. And I wonder what you think that impact is going to be on gun control. Well, and also, will Mr. Crumbley see a similar sort of judgment, do you think?
Yeah, so if I were the attorneys for Ethan Crumbley's father, who still is
Mm,
awaiting trial on similar charges, although, based on slightly different fact patterns, based on what he did and
right.
did not do, I would be trying to plead out right now because the conviction of his mom was really, really historic and important, in the sense that it is holding parents accountable for their role in their children having access to firearms, and more than having access in this case, in the case of going out and being a straw
Right.
buyer and getting these guns for their children. I wrote, I think it's about a year ago, I wrote a column after a story about a little boy playing with
Mm,
a loaded gun as if it was a toy went viral, talking about safe handling laws and liability and responsibility of parents when it comes to gun control. We talk about gun control a lot in terms of cases like the one involving that horrific shooting in Oxford, Michigan, mass shootings. But the vast majority of people, including
mm,
children, gun violence is the number one killer of children in America. I don't know
I
if
know.
people realize that. And the vast majority of those cases happen in the home, right? So you don't have to have a kid who becomes a mass shooter for this to be a big problem, and that there is a need to put parents
Hmm.
on notice that they bear responsibility for that. And I think if prosecutors, on the one level, I hear people saying nothing's going to change. This isn't going to change anything. Well, I think this is different because if prosecutors can put parents on notice that you can go
Hmm.
to prison, perhaps for the rest of your life, if you don't make sure that you are in control of your guns, that they are away from your children, and they don't pose a threat to someone, that can really hit home in a way that people will kind of poo-poo gun control measures. Um, and I think if this can serve as an example
Hmm.
beyond Michigan to prosecutors to bring these cases, to say they're going to bring these cases and to make that case, it could be a deterrent. I mean, we have nothing to lose and we have everything to
That
gain.
is exactly what my question was. And so thank you for answering it, is whether or not prosecutors in other parts of the country will also decide to use that as when they're deciding to bring a case. And if we could turn back time, and if other parents in other shootings would be implicated, right? Um, I know that when I'd take my kids, well, when they were more like kid like, to the pediatrician would always say, "Is there a gun in your home?"
Mm.
And maybe if they can start asking the question, if it's coming from a different place than like your TV set, which you're
Yeah.
probably not watching anyway, but a pediatrician saying, "Do you have guns in your home? And if so, are they locked up securely?" Because parents go to prison if they're not.
Yeah, and it's good that the pediatrician is asking that because it is a public health issue. But I think also in a lot of these cases, even in that circumstance, people think, oh, well, my guns are safe, or my kids don't know where they are, or
Right.
they can't get to them. And parents, and they can. The fact of the matter is, children have far more access and are far more aware than parents often think. So I think if you tell them you
Hmm.
can go to jail, and they're hearing that from an authority, hopefully, we'll see, hopefully that can make a difference and keep people both in their homes and in their schools
Yeah, I hope
safer.
so too. And I hope that it becomes something that people use. You couldn't use it in retroactively, could you? If you were a prosecutor?
Usually not. Usually, there are a lot of constitutional
Mm.
limitations to applying laws retroactively unless there's a really good reason to, but certainly proactively, it could be, I hope, a
Well, what
powerful
if we
tool.
get rid of the Constitution, like if Trump becomes president?
Yeah, there you go. That solves
There
all of
you
your
go.
problems. That's the ticket.
Um, and more of the comedy stylings of Marissa and the Constitution. Um, Speaking of the Constitution, the DC Circuit Court yesterday laid down a bit of a, I love saying precedent when it has to do with the former president, the precedent setting decision that proclaimed Trump an actual citizen, not a human necessarily, but definitely a citizen of the United States and not a demigod. And I know that Elise Stefanik is worried because she worries a lot about stuff, that presidents will now face political persecution and prosecution on this because of this. And I heard earlier that Andrew Johnson from Beyond the Grave is now suing Rutherford B. Hayes for voting to impeach him. So it's starting. That's all I'm saying. It's starting. And we should all be aware that at least. So give me a little bit of like your thoughts about what the DC court said and the import of it. And then I will bombard you with questions about it.
Yeah. So I will start with the Congresswoman from New York and then work backwards from there. She was essentially echoing an argument that was being made by Donald Trump in his camp, right? That, a president needs total immunity or else he will be hamstrung from being able to take any action for fear that he will immediately be prosecuted by his political enemies the minute he steps out of the White House. And I posted a picture on Threads yesterday of the 4 living former presidents yucking it up and saying, yeah, I really wish they would stop prosecuting each other. It's just ridiculous. I really need all of them.
Yeah.
I really need W to lighten up on Clinton.
Exactly.
Like that. It's
you
not
remember
a problem
when
if you're not
Biden
criming.
served papers to Jimmy Carter at his wife's funeral? Remember that?
Exactly. It's only a problem when you are a lawless president. And that's the way the Constitution works. And that's exactly how the 3-judge panel of the DC Circuit ruled. There are so many things about this opinion that I love, not just the substance of it, which basically completely tossed aside this argument being made that there is a separation of powers issue from prosecuting a former president, that it violates the principles of separation of power. Well, anybody, I grew up in the Schoolhouse Rock era, and the Schoolhouse Rock told us about checks and balances. Like, you don't even have to be a lawyer to understand that it's not only okay for other branches, the judicial branch, to hold a former president accountable, but it's necessary in order for our government to work. So this idea that no, there is nothing that courts can ever do to a president or nothing that the legislature can ever do to a president is so patently nonsensical on its face that I was really glad that there was a strong slap down there. But I also loved that they wrote the 3-judge panel wrote this opinion per curiam, which means that they all spoke in one voice. To me, that was the biggest flex. Like, they were saying, period with a DT,
period.
Period. We said what we said. We all said it, period. Now, Supreme Court, what do you say? It was just such a great move. And also the order that accompanied it that said to Trump, you have 1 week to go to the Supreme Court before this order goes into effect. Now, you can ask the full DC Circuit to review it, which we call an en banc review, if you want to, but the order will still go into effect. The only thing that will stop this from going into effect is if you go to the Supreme Court and ask their opinion, and you get 1 week to do that. And that was so brilliant, because I know a lot of people were worried because this decision took so long. Well, we have 3 judges writing in one voice. That takes some time. So we know that's one of the reasons why it did. But for them to say, hey, you're not going to use us as an excuse to drag this out, and we're not going to let you go to seek a review from the whole panel of the DC Circuit. First of all, you'll probably lose anyway. I mean, because, we probably know what our colleagues think about this, but you're not going to use this as a delay tactic. If you want to appeal, you can appeal. But the time is ticking.
That is so beautiful. I like the fact that they tied a bow on the top, right? Because I don't always feel that is happening. But so for those of us in the back, because we're not always paying attention, that's how come I'm in the back of the thing, the classroom. What impact do you think this unison decision will have on other Trump cases? How does it impact it? Or doesn't it?
It could have an impact. Yeah, it does, because the issue of immunity would also apply to any other case that Trump is facing that is based on his actions while in office, right? Because that's the whole point. If he was doing something while he was still president, and on January 6th, it's hard to believe, but he was still president. it would apply to those. But in other cases, it wouldn't apply at all. So, for example, the the civil cases like E. Jean Carroll, that would only apply to the extent that he said things while he was in office. It wouldn't apply to what he said or did before he was in office, which is
Right.
part of that liability, or what he said afterwards. Also wouldn't apply to, for example, the classified documents case, because that all happened after he left office. So he doesn't have the same kind of immunity claim, even though his lawyers were trying to make one. But anything else that's arising during. So, for example, to whatever extent the Trump organization business cases arises out of some of his actions that were taking place while he was in office, it could. But I find it really difficult to see how the Supreme Court disturbs the district's courts, the DC circuits rather, finding whether they grant the case and take it up and hear it, or if they just approve it without, deny cert and just say, you know what, we're going to let that DC Circuit opinion stand. That seems right to us. I just don't see how that matters. So in that case, no, that means that he would not have immunity out of any liability he faces from his time in office.
Let's just like rest on that for a moment. I think we need some time to just sort of rest on it. I think
it's important. It's a big deal.
Rachel Vindman, as who you know, posted yesterday that when the news broke, she was in the doctor's office, and some guy also got like the news ping on his phone, and he was like, "Yeah, let's get the son of a bitch."
Think Verizon is expensive? Think again. Anyone can bring their AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store today, and we'll give you a better deal. So bring us your bill. Walk in, run in, pogo stick in, teleport if you can. Ride on the back of a rollerblading yak, or fly in on the wings of a majestic falcon. Any way you can, bring your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store today, and we'll give you a better deal on the best network. Based on RootMetrics Best Overall Mobile Network Performance, U.S. second half 2025. All rights reserved. Must provide very recent postpaid consumer mobile bill in the name of the person redeeming the deal. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Right. I mean, it's important not just for him, but how crazy would it be to have a ruling, or to have someone who honestly believes that a president is above the law? It's just such a gobsmacking idea, and it just flies in the face of everything. I mean, why did Ford pardon Nixon if Nixon had immunity? It just doesn't make any sense.
You're right. It was a really good point. It doesn't make any sense. And speaking of not making sense, and I just have to say this out loud because I read this last night, alone, and I couldn't even put the words in it to like retweet it or whatever. Was Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday in front of a camera, and speaking of not making sense, she stood there in front. Did you see her last night where she stood there in front? I'm so sorry. I could send the clip to you. She stands in front of the microphone and she goes, on January, and I'm paraphrasing just because it's not worth quoting her. On January 6th, Donald Trump called in the National Guard, and they're saying that was illegal, and they prosecute him for an insurrection. Whereas when Biden is inaugurated, the entire area is surrounded with the National Guard, and you don't see them prosecute. Yeah, exactly. For people not being able to see what we're doing, the furrow, your brows just went deep into a furrow. Yeah, I don't think that makes any sense, does it? No.
Does not.
And I just don't.
It does not.
Is it really just the audience of one? I don't understand.
That's much of it. I think that the audience beyond that, if they support them, many of them very well know this is nonsensical.
They don't
but they
care.
Don't care.
That's just Marjorie. She's a supporter.
Yeah.
Speaking of supporters, Allen Weisselberg, big supporter of Donald Trump for a long time, got a little letter from Judge Engoron yesterday saying, I read this stuff in like the paper, and this is my take on his letter. I read some stuff in the paper that said might be doing a plea deal for perjury. What happened? What does that all mean to us?
Yeah, that was really something. So in this Trump fraud case that we had been so, at least I was, I believed Judge Engoron when he said that by the end of January there would be an opinion, and
Mhm.
January 31st came and went, and I was like, "Come on, what are we doing? Like, what's taking so long? Show us the money." I mean, he's Donald Trump has already been found liable for fraud, for his manipulation of valuations as uh, as the head of the Trump organization. So now all that's left for the judge to decide is the damages for that charge, as well as a couple of additional charges that are pending. And, there was this delay and we didn't know why. Now, we did hear a couple things. One, that the court monitor appointed to look over the finances suggested that there is still nefarious bookkeeping going on and there may be some tax evasion afoot. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe the judge wants to take a closer look at that. And then there was also this report that Trump's former accountant could plead guilty for perjuring himself. Now, he was a key witness in this. So it makes perfect sense for the judge to say, wait a minute, if one of the witnesses upon which my ruling is based is suggesting that he lied on the stand, we may need to sort this out before I make this ruling, if for no other reason that it could up the damage awards beyond what I thought that they would be. So if there was a reason for delaying a a decision like this, that seems like a pretty
Seems
good
to
one.
me like a pretty good one. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
they'll be interested to see how that turns out. And if you'd like to lay any bets right here, as we move on to the Super Bowl subject, do
Oh,
you want to lay bets? Would you rather lay bets on what
yeah.
Judge Engoron says, or how the Super Bowl is going to turn out?
I have no idea how the Super Bowl is gonna turn out. I will say, I haven't paid attention to the
Mhm.
NFL in a long time, but I used to be a Lions fan, so I was, just happy that the Lions got one step away from the
Fair
Super
enough.
Bowl, like, that's as far as they got, but that was a victory for me. Beyond that, I'm just rooting for Taylor Swift. I don't care about anything else. But, yeah, I think that Judge Engoron's gonna say that Donald Trump has to pay a lot of
Mm,
money, and I would guess that there would also be a restriction of his ability to practice real estate or be on a corporate board in the state of New York, which is essentially what they call the corporate death
mm.
penalty. And for Donald Trump, um, that is where he lives, right? His whole persona is built on this idea that he's a
For
businessman and
years,
that he makes
decades.
money and and so that really is probably the worst penalty that can come. I know that a lot of things have been written by people who I respect greatly, including Ruth Marcus, questioning whether that penalty meets the crime or if Trump is being excessively punished because he's Trump. I think that it would meet the crime because, yes, it is rare for that kind of penalty to be handed down, but it's also rare to engage in decades long fraud to the depth and extent that Donald Trump has. And I think if you don't hold him responsible to the full extent that the law allows, this is a penalty that is allowed expressly under New York law, then it would appear the opposite to me, that he's getting some sort of special treatment, which we see him getting in the court all the time, right? His outbursts, his holding press conferences in the hallway of the courtroom. If I had a client that acted
Yeah.
remotely like he did, that client would be spending so much time
Hmm.
in jail, like in contempt all the time. Donald Trump isn't seeing that. So he's already being treated differently. I think not holding him to the full extent of the law would be a favoritism that would erode trust in our court system as opposed to feed this sense of
Right. And think about the
injustice.
precedent it also sets. Other people break those crimes, and it's, and the other thing is, it's not a
Yeah.
victimless crime. You know, even though, he might lose some money on this. The state of New York didn't get loads and loads and loads and loads of tax money that we need for, I don't know, stuff, like lots of important stuff.
Yeah. Your schools, your
Hmm.
roads, and also other people had to use their real valuations or face penalties. And if banks are giving and
Hmm.
insurance companies are insuring things that should not be funded or insured, or at least not to the extent that they are, it is not a it's not a zero-sum game, but it does prevent other people from getting funding. It's really difficult for businesses, particularly women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, to get the capital that they need to survive, let alone thrive. And for Donald Trump just to be taking this money he's not entitled to and thinking, oh, well, so what? The banks are happy. Well, yeah, other businesses aren't happy. And so that is patently unfair. So you're absolutely right. It is not a victimless crime. And it's important. That's why we have these laws on the books again. So yeah, he really needs to face the music for it.
Who is the Super Bowl halftime person, speaking of music? Do you have any idea? No,
I don't even know. That's the part that I...
Sorry, people. I should have come prepared for this.
Attention. There's so much news, Marissa. I have not been able to pay attention to anything other than, like, I usually am such a pop culture vulture, but I have saved that wonderful fast car duet at the Grammys. I have not seen anything about pop culture. Like,
you haven't seen it yet? I have
seen that. Like, I did see, I'm a Tracy Chapman stan from back in the day. So I did see that. And I so appreciate that she was getting her flowers and recognition in a way that made it feel really genuine and not, so many times you feel like, especially artists of color and LGBTQ artists, that, their culture is appropriated. This was such a celebration of her that I love that so much. But aside from that, I know nothing that has happened in the pop culture realm in the last, like are J-Lo and Ben still married? I don't even know. Like, I'm so busy focusing on Trump, I've lost touch with everything else.
I mean, think about crimes that man has committed. He's taken this away from you. It's awful.
You are correct.
But you, along with being like someone who, like, I'm going to sew myself a wedding gown today. I mean, I don't know if people know that about you, but you are, if they follow you and they read everything you've written, which they should do, they will know that you also know your way around a sewing machine and are refurbing all sorts of vintage clothes. And I know that you're fantastic at pie crust, but I'm also obsessed by food. And you posted a recipe, and I was like, on this, it's like 2 weeks ago, I don't know, some crazy week in law. And you've been like, must have been on every single news channel. You were like probably recording Sisters-in-Law. And then you're like, and here I am making a delicious crock-pot chili. And I was like, how do you do that? I was so impressed. And I think I took a nap afterwards and was like, got takeout because I was like, I can't compete. So I want you to, if you can, share with us your chili recipe. I truly am so impressed by this, I have to say.
So, well, first, before I say this, the beauty of a slow cooker is that it's so easy. Like, you could just, I think it was probably 9 in the morning, and you get up and you throw a bunch of stuff in there and you close the lid and you forget about it for hours. That's like the beauty of it. And that's why you can multitask with one very easily. So my slow cooker is easily my favorite appliance in the kitchen. But yeah, I'm not a recipe cooker.
Fair enough.
It's something that my husband doesn't understand at all. Like, for me, it's actually harder to read a recipe and try to cook off of it. And I certainly could never write down anything. Like, I don't measure anything. In fact, when I was putting the dishes away, emptying the dishwasher, I turned to my husband with the measuring cups and where do these go? We've been married 2.5 years. And he's like, how do you not know where they go? I said, because I don't measure anything. He's like, you know what? You're right. You don't. So fair enough.
That is the best.
I put stuff in. I kind of eyeball the ingredients, see how they're going, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, taste it, and, adjust as you go kind of cooker. But I will say this about my chili. Lately, I've been making veggie chili. I do know how to make meat chili, but I really enjoy a good veggie chili because, especially in my household, as time goes on, we are more and more drawn to non-animal protein sources. We eat less and less meat. Not for, partially for climate reasons. We understand that is a more sustainable way. But I mean, yes, I'm not a vegan. I
Yeah.
still eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but we just eat less of it. And so I love a good non-meat dish that feels
Yeah.
hearty and satisfying. And veggie chili is so that. Like it really feels good, especially in the wintertime. I usually use 3 beans, a white, red, and a kidney. And the 2 vegetables that are a must, right? You got to have onions and you got to have celery because I like to have that little bit of
Oh,
crunch.
okay.
And that, especially when you cook it in a slow cooker, it cooks it through, but you still have that little bit of crispness, that texture in the chili that I enjoy. Beyond that, you can put in what you want. You want to put in carrots? Great. You want to put in corn? Great. Like you want to put
Can
in
I put in
peppers? Great. If you
squash?
don't
Can I
have any
put
of
in
that stuff,
squash? I like
you
a
can put in
squash.
squash. Great. If you don't have that stuff, great. Like that's one thing I really love about chili. So my 3 secret ingredients for a veggie chili, one of my
I'm
secret
writing it down.
ingredients is quinoa.
Quinoa.
Quinoa, it thickens it. It gives it a
From the
nice
get-go, you
texture,
put
and
it
it's also a
in the beginning
superfood.
or at the end?
It depends. I put it in somewhere toward the middle if it's dried, but I often keep cooked quinoa frozen in the freezer, and then I put it in like in
Okay,
the
that's
last
also a
hour.
genius tip right there.
Um,
That's how you feed
yeah,
people in your house, including yourself, and
yeah.
our legal genius. Okay, I get it. Frozen bits of quinoa.
So that's secret ingredient number 1. Secret ingredient number 2, a shot of bourbon.
Well, I'm listening.
A healthy shot of bourbon. You put it in at the beginning. It certainly is still kid friendly. All the alcohol burns off, but the flavors, it just really helps those chili flavors and the flavors from your chili powder and your cumin and your coriander and whatever spices you want to put in really blend in a nice way. One reason that chili often tastes better the next day than the first is that it just gives those flavors a chance to make friends the next day. But I find that bourbon helps bring the party together a little faster. So
I find that too.
The first night's
myself,
chili.
but
Bourbon's always good for a party.
I-
And finally, my last secret ingredient is hot honey. I always added a sweet component to my chili, whether it's sugar, whether it's you can do molasses or maple syrup, or honey. But hot honey just helps you add another layer of spice that's not overcoming the chili. It's not going to, burn your face off, but it works really nicely.
And is it
So
like
those are
2
my 3 secret
tablespoons? I mean,
ingredients.
like,
It's, you squeeze
how long
some in.
it's like Jamie Oliver would count, or we'd be like glug. It's 2 glugs.
It's probably a couple, maybe
a
tablespoon
swirl or
or
2.
two.
Okay, so a
Not
little
too
wrist
much.
action. Okay.
Yeah, and you taste it. You taste it as you go, and you can adjust along the way. If it's too sweet, you can add some more garlic or oregano. If it's not sweet enough, you
So
can add a little
spice-wise,
more.
we're like garlic, oregano, chili powder.
Yes. So all of the above. Cumin is, especially if you're using meat, to me, like I like using chicken or turkey. Cumin is an absolute must. It's still good in veggie chili too. If you don't have fresh cilantro on hand to put on top at the end, coriander gives you that same flavor, is also a good one. I also like adobo.
Me too.
But I'm careful with that because you don't want it to get salty, especially if you're slow cooking. I go easy on the salt in the beginning and salt it more toward the end, because if you put too much salty stuff in the beginning, it can get super salty by the time it's done cooking. And then I cook it either on high for 4 hours or low for like 7 or 8.
Thank you for this. And are there requisite toppings? Like for me, I don't care what chili it is. I have to have cheese on it because I have to have cheese on everything.
Yes. I like cheese. I like cilantro. I like scallions. My husband likes sour cream. So yeah, we have a variety of toppings to choose from.
Great. Are you going to make it for the Super Bowl?
I don't think so. But you know what? Well, I've given no thought to the Super Bowl. I've not thought past, I haven't even thought.
It's been a busy week. But I thank you so much for being here, for sharing your knowledge of everything. And I think next time we'll just get the sewing machines out and you can teach me how to sew a hem.
Oh, that will be fun. That'll be fun. I'll do something fun like a blind hem.
Okay. My grandmother was a seamstress, and that's where it ended. That's all I have to say. But I have all her
Yeah.
stuff. I just am not quite sure what to do with it.
Oh, you can pick it up. Watch a couple YouTube videos. You can pick it up.
I will do that. I thank you so much for being here and for giving us all this knowledge and spending this time with us. You're amazing.
Sure. Thank you
And I'm going to go make some chili.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
So much. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you all, and happy Super Bowl Sunday to all who celebrate. You can follow Kimberly at Kimberly E. Atkins at threads.com. And of course, listen to her and all the other great sisters-in-law on the Sisters-in-Law podcast. And if you would, please follow me on Threads at Marissa Rothkopf Eats and on my Substack at marissarothkopf.substack.com. Have a great week.